Hello, 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 and we're back with another live here at the SEO Mastery Summit. So I'm joined by Ted and Kyle, and we're gonna talk about SEO testing today. I harassed these guys a little bit, and I'm like, we've heard a lot about SEO, but I haven't actually heard a lot of mention about testing. And I know Ted and Kyle obviously do a lot of testing, so I asked them if they would be okay to come on here and do a session specifically about doing testing, right? Because one of the things, I mean, I love conferences. I love hearing a lot of what people think work. However, as an SEO, you need to test yourself. Don't always just take what people say for the truth and nothing but the truth. Run testing yourself. So I'm very, very excited, and I'm super thankful for Ted and Kyle that they were okay to jump on with me today. So thanks a lot, guys.
Oh, many thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Excellent.
I'll go ahead and share my screen.
Yeah, Kyle, you've done a little bit of a couple of slides around it, I think. So
Sure thing.
If you want to go ahead and do that.
Can you see those?
Yep.
Slides. All right. So GUESSEO is dead. SEO myth busting and the science of SEO testing. So I'm Kyle Roof. With me also is Ted Kabaitis, and these are the things that we do. I'm a Page Optimizer Pro, and my agency is High Voltage SEO, and Ted is Cora, and then together we both do IMG. So a little bit about me. I'm the lead SEO for High Voltage SEO, and I'm the co-creator of Page Optimizer Pro. Ted, do you want to a little bit about you?
Yeah, I've been an SEO since the beginning, so I'm an old schooler. I have SEO Tool Lab. Our primary product is Cora SEO software. Prior to that, I was an in-house SEO for an online retailer for over 17 years.
Right on, right on. All right, so this is what we're going to talk about, like why testing, some examples, how to run a test, etc. Why do most SEOs brush off testing, and a couple case studies. Ted, I guess kind of how did you get into testing? Like, I think that kind of gets into the question of like why testing. How did that get started for you?
I think most of us kind of start, the same organic way. Like, I'm sure I'm not the first person to test an SEO, and I won't be the last person to invent SEO testing either. I think it's kind of a natural thing. But really, it started off with, as an SEO for an online retailer, I had to work with engineering to get changes made and deployed, and there are deployment cycles and management approval. And, by the time you get through all those enterprise SEO hurdles, I could typically do 5 or 6 SEO initiatives per year. And I was a commission-based SEO. So those 5 or 6 things I worked through that whole enterprise process had to be wins each and every time. So I had to make sure that every time I asked for something, I knew what the result was going to be. And so the company had about 15 online stores. So I took the ones that were not doing well, the terrible ones, and I turned them into my test environment where I'd go in and play with them, muck them up, make mistakes, figure out what works. And any successes I had, we'd bring over to the money sites. And I kept knocking it out of the park using that strategy. Every time I went to the business saying, do this, we always won big. And that's why I was able to have, one massive client for 17 years. I never fumbled. How did you start?
I started really kind of from the beginning of when I was taking SEO seriously, in that I wanted answers. I've said this before, but I would search for something. Is this a ranking factor, or should I do this? And you'd get 3 yeses, 3 nos, and 3 maybes. And I realized that that's just not sustainable. You can't learn anything that way. And then it occurred to me that I was like, oh, I think everybody's just running their own tests. That's why you really can't find this information. And so that's when I started building test sites and then developing ways to test things. For me, and getting into some of the examples of things I've tested, the biggest awakening for me was realizing that Google can't read. Google is an algorithm and it's not a human being. And that mind shift was huge for me. And in going through that, some of the things that I discovered is that, spelling's not a ranking factor, grammar is not a ranking factor, Flesch-Kincaid reading score level is not a ranking factor. Those types of things really helped guide me to understand, okay, if these aren't, then what could be? And then also finding that there are different weights between different factors. Some factors are actually worth more than other things. And those types of tests then kind of really shaped the way that I ended up doing SEO. Also shaped the way that I was doing tests. Do you have some examples of some of the things, maybe some foundational things that you've tested, Ted?
Yeah, absolutely. I would test keywords and various HTML tags, which ones seem to be special to Google, which ones aren't. I would learn basics about keyword density. And what I found was there is this massive time saving, because I was scrambling through all the blogs, scrambling through all the news, trying to figure out what's important, what's real. And I figured out that if I find some basic fundamental truths that are very commonly talked about, I can look at the articles and go, oh, no, this one violated keyword density. Nope, this one is claiming, Flesch-Kincaid is a strong factor, and I could just throw those out at a glance and know which posts were interesting and which ones weren't. And even more so, when I learned the methodologies, I knew what to look for in a credible analysis and a credible study. And so I'd look for those things. Are they sharing data? Are they sharing their correlation coefficients? Do they tell us how to reproduce the result? Do they tell us what keywords they use? And all those things lend credibility. And so through testing, I learned to look for those things as well.
One other thing I would add to that list too would be, has anybody actually reviewed this data or just them? That's often a very big issue with, hey, I tested this and this is what it is. And, nobody actually looked at anything other than the person running the test. How do you ensure, there are several different ways to run tests. How do you like to run your tests, and then how do we ensure that those are meaningful results?
Well, I've found, over the past 2-3 years of working with the testing community, things have evolved very quickly once you get under peer review. So what you think is your science actually gets serious once you have people critiquing how you did it. And what I've found is that there's a spectrum of testing. Not all testing is the same. And so at the very basic level, you get these field observations where you say, well, how does Google behave when I do this? How does Google behave when I do that? And you're just kind of looking at search and playing with search. And then it starts to get more serious where you start creating pages, will it index? So if I put a keyword in a hidden div, will Google find that keyword, and can I search for it and see it in the results? And those are easy tests. And then you get to more complicated systems where you're like, will it boost? Now all of a sudden you need to run the test, 12 times in parallel and see if you get the same results, because you could see random outcomes. And then you get to these really academic super tests. How can we figure out if Google's using TF-IDF algorithm? How can we tease out clues from Google? So there's this whole spectrum of testing that ranges from, basic to extremely advanced. And really people just slot in, where their skills are, where they're comfortable, and with what their goal is, what they're trying to learn.
I think there are two types in there that I gravitate towards personally. I like to do small, might be like a small batch single variable test where you've got a handful of pages and you're trying to get one page to move. So identical pages is the concept, and then you change one thing on one page, and then you see if that page moves up, you see if it moves down, or if it doesn't move. That has to be, that's kind of towards the boost, but type concepts, but it's a smaller set. One thing that is annoying is that it has to be run multiple times. You can't run it just one time. So a concept that you have, Ted, that you talk about a lot is the coin rigged. And while there might be some randomness thrown in by Google, at a certain point, you can see that the coin is rigged, that if you run it enough times, you can see a consistent result. And then you feel pretty good that you've identified something that is or is not a boost. Would you say that's fair?
Yeah, and you brought up something that I get criticized for a lot in the world, because people say, well, how can you test Google's algorithm? You need millions upon millions of samples. It's like, no, you don't. If you're testing if a coin is rigged, you flip it, 20 times. If you get heads all 20 times, you're pretty confident something's fishy with that coin flip. And with the web, it's kind of the same thing, because really what we're trying to do is see what's contributing to the sort order of the result set. And at conferences, I will test the audience. I'll show them a result set and ask them to just shout out when they can see how it's sorted. And people will be like, oh, it's sorted by price descending, or, oh, it's sorted by product name ascending. And, they don't need millions of samples to feel confident about how it's being sorted. Now, in our testing, we get a lot more serious about it. We want more samples, but it's not like we need millions of samples. We need to use statistics to make sure that we have the right confidence in the results we're seeing.
That's, I think, one of the objections that some people will have is that, to what you just articulated, you need so many sample sets in order to actually know anything. And since you can't do it into the millions, you can't have any confidence. How many coin flips do you think you need before you feel pretty good, even in a smaller set?
Far less than 100. Far less. Yeah, you'll know that coin is rigged pretty quickly.
Well, especially when you've got the same setup. Even if you did something 5 times and you got the anticipated result 4 times, those are pretty good odds that you've actually run into something that doesn't take a statistical genius to look at and be like, you know what, it's kind of weird that happened 4 straight times, and or 4 out of 5 times. If you do it again and it happens again, you're probably there, right?
Yeah. And what we tend to find is that once we know how to measure something that may or may not be a factor, the math is really quite simple and straightforward. So you take your measurements, you run the math, and either the math works or it doesn't. What's tricky is trying to think of all the things that may or may not be factors. And even if we do find things that turn out to not be factors, we don't really know if in the future they might be factors. And anything we do find that is a factor now, tomorrow it might not be a factor. So it's really this constant game of re-verifying everything we know, especially after updates.
I think something else
I would say as well, like obviously the big difference is when you're doing testing, right? If you're getting 5 positive results and 7 negative results, then you obviously need a lot more sample size, right? But if you test something 5 times and it shows your assumption is right, 4 out of 5 or 5 out of 5, then obviously I mean, you can look at statistical significance, but then obviously you're in a much, much better place, right? So it really depends on how frequent, and that often depends on outside variables, because even when you just build test sites and so on, there's always a bunch of variables in there.
But not all testing requires all that sampling and all that repeat testing. There are types of tests where you can be one and done, like the will it index test. You can say, will Google index a keyword in a hidden div? And if it happens once at all, you have your answer. And then there's important information in that testing. It won't tell you, does that boost you in the rankings? But then keywords and hidden divs can expand your keyword reach. They can help your indexing. They might have cloaking opportunities. So you can learn a lot even from the simpler tests that don't use sampling.
One other thing I think people run into as well is what they want to test. They don't realize how to get things down to a one thing. Often people say, like, I want to test this technique, and then there's this and that and this and that and this and that. And what you have to do is you have to boil it down to individual parts, so you can start to take the technique apart and see what is actually doing anything. And a lot of people, I think, struggle with that concept, because really what they want is a case study of, I did this technique and this was the outcome, not necessarily which part of this is affecting the algorithm.
Yeah, and one step further than that is people will run a test and they'll learn a fact about search, but then they don't go the next step, which is, how can I now apply this knowledge to the SEO I do every day? How can I get tactical with this information?
Yeah. Well, and one other thing too, on confidence level, if you're 80% confident that something will work and you put into play, when you think about big wins, or where can we get our big wins from? If you were right 80% of the time in SEO, you're the best SEO in the world. So if you hit those kind of numbers, that's a confidence level that will drive tons of traffic and clicks to your site. And being that correct. So when you look at the things that we test, and if we feel this range of confidence and you start to apply those things because we know that they're movers, they would actually do something within the algorithm, you're going to be very, very successful. We do have a couple examples. I can share mine first, as it kind of goes to the easier set of, will this index, or what happens when we do this? And these are one-off kind of tests, and then you obviously do want to replicate just to make sure nothing went completely weird. But once you see a result, you can feel pretty good about that result, even off of one. And this test is, will Google read all the text from a title that is cut off in the SERPs? You've probably seen this before, and a lot of SEOs really get concerned about their title length, and that they don't want anything to go beyond what Google will consider, and that's 60 characters. And then after that, Google do a ... Is Google reading anything past that ... Let me share my screen over there real quick. I think I need to do this. Can you guys see that?
Not yet.
How about now?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So will Google read all the text from a title that's too long? So this is a test that I ran. And the quick takeaway is that yes, Google will, but what we're looking at is everything in the SERPs past the ... And according to Moz, if you want to look it up, Google is labeled between 50 and 60 characters in the SERP. And that's just a quick search that I did. But to perform this test, I created a title that has 128 characters. So that is significantly longer than the 50 to 60. It's more than double. It is absolutely a title that is too long. At the end of that title, put a fake keyword. This is a keyword that does not exist in Google's SERPs. So the concept is that if Google crawls this page and considers that particular keyword, when I search for it, it will be the only result that shows. And that's exactly what happened. So this title goes in, the keyword is there at the end of the title. It's only there in the title. It's not anywhere else on the page. And then after crawling the page, you can search for it, and Google will index the page. It will show the page in the SERPs. And you can see that that's the part of the title that is displayed, and then the ... and then actually probably double that in length. That's where the keyword lives. So it's past the area that Google has cut off. And what we can see is that for indexing purposes, Google will consider anything that is beyond the cutoff point. It's significant in that that if for whatever reason something is cut off, Google is at least still reading that. The next question would be, is this something that can provide a boost? And that's obviously something that we want to test and move forward with. But from just a point of, is this even crawled in the first place? Yes, it is. And Google will do that. And the other thing too is that this amount that is shown, that's 59 characters. So Moz was 100% correct. That Google will show between 50 and 60 and then cut you off. And that's exactly what we did. I've done this test multiple times. I've done it in the past, and this was a fun redo that I just recently did last month on this, just to make sure, as Ted said, we need to make sure these things that we feel that we know, that we're certain before, that we still are certain with them. And this was one of those things.
Very cool. I'll share my screen. So in my test, we were in the group, we were trying to test indexing in general. So we were trying to learn more about how can we index lots of pages quickly? How can we make that indexing stable so they don't get de-indexed? And so there's a lot of things our group is testing right now all around the area of indexing. And so one of the questions that came up is, how many keywords can we index from a single page? Like, is there a limit? Can we figure out what that is? So to do that, we made a single web page with 1 million imaginary keywords. Keywords no one in the universe has ever used before. We invented 1 million of them, put them on a single page, and gave it to Google. And the idea is that over time, we would statistically sample through that 1 million keywords and find out how far into the document it's getting indexed. And so in the first 24 hours, what we learned is the top 6,000 words of that page got indexed. There's a clear cliff where the indexing got noticeably worse. And so what you can generally expect if you're trying to get a quick effect out of Google, you have to focus on your top 6,000 words if you want the results in about 24 hours. Now, when you go out to 48 hours, all of a sudden the cliff moves to about 180,000 keywords indexed, which is awesome. Blew my mind. That's a lot of keywords indexed off of a single page. And to get to that limit in 48 hours is awesome. And just imagine the possibilities of ranking for 180,000 keywords in 48 hours. It's technically possible that we prove that here because we did that. And what's also interesting is that why is it so slow in the first 24 hours, but yet it gets really fast in the second? What we think might be happening is something to the effect of you have to wait your turn. So when you submit the page to Google, you go into a queue, you're probably waiting for your turn. And it just so happens in about that 24-hour time, we had started processing and it only had gotten to 6,000. Now that queue time may be different for other people. If the queue is largely empty, maybe you get indexed faster. If the queue is largely full, maybe it takes even longer. But we suspect that it's probably queue time. So we waited another day and the cliff didn't move. It stayed at 180,000 words. And we waited another day and it stayed at 180,000 words. We found the limit. You can only get 180,000 keywords indexed for a single URL. Now, there are some interesting things about this that we found very compelling. One of the things is that in SEO testing, because we like to minimize all the variables, we tend to have these really thin, crappy test pages, and it's really hard to keep them all indexed, especially if you're running experiments in parallel. We would, deploy 700 test pages, and they'd get indexed, but then they'd fall out of the index a few days later. These big pages, they index easy and they stay indexed. The ease of getting indexed and staying indexed well is so awesome that it has me rethinking, like, Brian Dean's Backlinko blog strategy, where he focused on 40 posts. He made them very long form content and he invested in them heavily. What he really got out of that strategy beyond the keyword reach was also very stable indexing, not falling out. And so we're really looking at these characteristics now of long form content, even if it's not even English. This isn't quality content, it's random imaginary words. Got improved indexing because we made it big. And so we find weird discoveries like that when we test.
So quick question, Ted. Was it the first 100-some thousand words, or was it?
Google very much processes the document from the first word at the top, counting down through the document. So it's a top-down scan until it hits the limit.
The thing I love about that too, Ted, is right now everyone is having indexing issues. I mean, just completely. Like all sites are having this problem. This is a system-wide issue with Google with getting things indexed, and not necessarily what we were shooting for. This was like, let's see what happens, But then in doing that type of work and running that type of test, that discovery is made. Like,
yep.
Oh, we can now apply this way because now we know how Google's working.
And this is an example of a test that was really hard and technical to do. Some testing is easy, some testing is hard. This one was hard because of the magnitude. It's really difficult to submit 1 million words into WordPress. WordPress doesn't want to do that. So just getting this to happen and then checking the keywords, because obviously we can't rank track on 1 million, so we had to use statistical methods where we count into the document at different intervals, and we start testing 20, 30 keywords at a time and see how we do statistically. So this was more of a challenge than a normal test.
I would also say I hope you weren't the one having to make up the 1 million different keywords.
Well, we have tools for creating stuff like that. So, but one of the cool cool benefits of being in a testing group is you get to learn from everyone around you. And so, while this time I had the hard test, other times, Kyle has had the hard test, and I got to do the free, easy learning. You kind of take turns getting the free, easy knowledge or doing the testing yourself, and having a group of people that you can work with and get advice and bounce ideas. I mean, it's been awesome. It's my favorite part of SEO is the testing community.
It sounds almost like you're recommending networking with other people.
Oh yeah, it's a must in testing. There are so few testers, but it is so valuable. The way I look at testing is, next year's conference presentations, next year's courses, next year's SEO best practices, next year's SEO tools. They all come out of testing, new discoveries. Like all of that stuff is fueled by this kind of work. It's just that most people don't realize the SEO life cycle.
Something, Ted, that I also like that what we're doing is if you want to test, we can help you do that. If you want to jump in and actually do it, we're there for you, and the community will support you and push you into like, okay, this is how you can set up your first test and let's get it going. But on the other hand, I know that some people don't want to do that. They like the test, they like it a lot, but you are not obligated in any way, shape, or form to actually perform a test, and just participating in the discussion of them is fantastic, because that often brings up a lot in terms of like, oh, that's great, I could apply it this way. And that's a way that I was not thinking. The person can see that information and they know the kind of SEO that they're doing or the sites that they have. And there are tons of insights that come just from the community that's not actually testing, but just is involved in the test themselves.
Oh yeah, and people just having feet on the ground, looking at what Google is doing, saying, hey, I put in keywords like X into Google and I get results like Y coming out. Just mentioning something like that to a test group, it really stirs the beehive. And yeah, we count on the community to raise the alarm on many issues.
For sure. Yeah, it's also nice too. Like, hey, is there an update going on? Like, we can actually take a look and see if there is always a nice thing. So Mass, we do have an offer. People want to jump in. Should we show that?
Sure.
Let's see. All right, so for the SEO Mastery Summit attendees, 7 days for $1 is what we're doing. It's $79 a month is the cost to get in, and there are a couple parts to this, not just the tests. So the tests are something that are done the second and fourth Thursday of every month. So we do about 10 new tests a month. And again, by being in the group, you have an opportunity to be part of the review. So you can listen to the testers who put the test together, listen to them talk about it, and then also the testing group kind of discuss implications of those tests. But you also have the opportunity to contribute a test and get involved in that if you want. But then we also have courses. Ted, do you want to talk a little bit about what we're doing with that?
Yeah, the courses are awesome because we have like 16 courses. They're brand new. They all were created within the past month to 6 weeks and loaded into the system. So it's the freshest information on a ton of different topics. And I even put in a course that's about low-level link building, which you probably have never heard of that, but I'm sure you probably know what it is. It's where you go and find sources of backlinks and build your backlinks manually one at a time. That's low-level link building. And so in my course, I talk about what can you expect from that practice, how can you do it safely so you're minimizing risk to your business. And I talk about 40 different types of backlinks and how you can find thousands of sources of those 40 types. And most of them you can get within minutes. And so that's my low-level link building course. There's lots of courses like that. You have a course on there too. What's your course?
Yeah, it's my brand new course, White Hat SEO. So in my course, I talk about what is white hat, what is within Google's guidelines, what is outside Google's guidelines. So with the idea that you can kind of make that determination, am I within the guidelines right now or am I not? But then also I go through effective techniques that are white hat. And the concept there is that if you're brand new to SEO, I think you could jump in and create a complete campaign out of these techniques. If you are an experienced SEO, I think a couple things. One is you can see effective techniques and probably implement them with something that you're already doing. But I also know that there are a few advanced concepts in here that I'm sure people have not thought about. And they can take those and within a completely white hat framework, apply something that's going to make their own SEO better. And it's a completely new course. Not all the courses are completely 100% new. Some are from this past year, but what we tried to do is grab courses that are kind of across a kind of a range. If you're brand new to SEO, you can get a good foot in the door and kind of move forward towards getting SEO done. If you're an experienced SEO, you can grab a lot of tools for your tool belt. We have things like building your own PBNs if that's something you want to do. How to flip and sell sites if you want to build a site and get the most out of it. Lead generation. But we even get to things like app store optimization. How would you even do that if you have a client that has an app or you'd like to build an app? How could you get that going? And we've got an instructor who I think he has over 200 apps, including 30 of the top language apps in the world. And he walks through and over the shoulder of actually how to get an app up and optimized for the app stores and for iOS and Google. And then also something like TikTok basics. Like how do you optimize for TikTok? Is that something that, do you have clients or are your visitors or potential visitors, are they there? What I really like about that is it may be something that might be awesome for you. It might not, but getting that knowledge, I think, is just a great tool for your tool belt. And you can check this thing out. So we try to go for a pretty wide range of things. So in addition to the like what's going on in Google right now with the tests and what can you apply, what's cutting edge, and some of it's what's beyond cutting edge, what's really out there. You've got that in the test, and then then the learning SEO part, either advancing or upskilling yourself or side skilling with a new tool. That's in the courses area, and that's all for the same price. And
I heard Craig Campbell just bought the TikTok one, so he's trying to upskill himself on TikTok.
That's perfect.
The crazy thing about what Kyle and Andrew have like really orchestrated with this course platform. When you go out into the world and you look at SEO courses, they'll be hundreds of dollars each. Sometimes they'll be $1,000 or more. You're getting all of our courses for $79 a month. So it's an opportunity that I feel is just remarkable. And I keep jabbing Kyle. Kyle, why so low? Why so low, Kyle?
I think we do have a FOMO aspect built in because we are marketers. So I think in the next 30 days, it'll go up by $10. I think it'll just continue to go up until we find what the market will bear.
All right, but it's a steal. So I highly recommend you guys try it out. At least see if it's right for you.
For sure.
Yeah, and I'd say it's nearly as good value as the summit. So the summit you could join on for free, but you guys charge a whole $1, so it is hundreds of % more expensive. But I wonder if there's not a nugget in there that will make you back the $1.
Well, that's the thing too. Like new courses are going in, and plus with the cutting edge SEO you get every month, I'm pretty sure somebody will get at least $79 worth of value out of it. You'll get a nug. You'll get a $79 nug for sure. Well, and then each month new courses are going in as well.
And there's also the whole community. And, what a lot of people don't realize is, community is tech support for marketing. If you're having a deliverability problem with your email server, there's someone in the community that's dealt with it. If you're wondering, should I do this thing I'm about to do to my client's website? Why not ask 200 industry professionals if it's a good idea?
Ted, have you been talking to my marketer again? I can tell you when you open a brand new domain like we did here with the SEO Mastery Summit, and then have 6,000 people on your list and start emailing them a couple of times a day. You definitely need to know what you're doing with emails. So.
Yeah. So community is everything. Whether it's ours or somebody else's, find a good community.
Cool. Well, thanks again for sharing the offer. As I said initially, like I'm definitely a big fan of testing and particularly getting those results and really testing the stuff people are saying, right? Because in the end of the day, it's just so often I see people like, oh yeah, this guy said I should do this, and then they're jumping off doing it, even if it either doesn't make sense or it doesn't it doesn't really reflect what's happening, right? But people have it's so easy for people to look for quick, small solutions that they think will change the world. But they only change the world if they're actually working. So very often, and particularly if you have a big money side, right? If you're doing the wrong changes, that can cost you a lot of money. So yeah, doing the testing up front is definitely great. So very happy for you guys to share your offer, and very, very keen on seeing what comes out of the community. I believe you just launched, is that correct?
Yes, just was it last week? Was it a week ago?
Yeah.
Okay. It's been a crazy week.
Again, fits totally into our spirit of providing awesome content at very, very affordable cost, right? So, sounds fantastic, and thank you guys very much for sharing. Anything else you want to share before we finish the live stream?
No, I think that's good. I think that's good.
Thank you for doing this awesome event. I keep hearing everybody talk about it. So it's a huge success, and I'm just thrilled that we can be a part of it.
For sure.
Awesome. Well, I don't see any questions in the live right now. So guys, thank you very much. And to all the listeners and to all the audience, check out SEOmasterysummit.com/IMG. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mass.